Hello and welcome again to VW Feasts, and today we're making empanadas. Yes, we're stepping back to Argentina. Multiple steps to this one. First of all, we're going to make the dough, and therefore you'll need flour, salt, plenty of lard and water. VW tells me that the first thing we're doing is making a salmuera, which is boiling water with salt in it. And to that, which we're going to add the lard. So, water, a lot of salt, and then in goes the lard. Obviously, fat does not dissolve in water, but we're making an emulsion. And it's this which is then going to form the basis for our dough. As you see, it slowly melts into the water. This gives ultimately the amount of lard gives the dough a very different flavour. Just give it a bit of a stir just to encourage that melting. And then when we've got everything melted, straight into a cool bowl and set off to one side. We'll be using that later. In the meantime, when that cools down, we'll look at the fillings. So we're using beef, and we've cut it down to small chunks, which will make beautiful bite sizes. We've used quite a high quality beef, and we've used it with quite a lot of fat in it, so it's going to give a better flavour. Olives. Here we've got some spring onions, and we divided the white bits and the green bits apart. A lot more fat and various other ingredients, and eggs. So let's get that fat melting down. So this is the combination of butter and lard. Unfortunately, this is not a diet dish. We've remarked how multiple cultures have dumplings of some description, whether they be parcels in pastry or in different things. So there's the Cornish pasty, there are the wontons, and this is the South American parcel of joy, the empanada. Different countries have different approaches to it, and this is much more an Argentinian empanada. So when we've got the butter melted, in goes some onions which have been sliced on a mandolin, carefully removing any tips of fingers or other things they've got in there. What we're trying to do here is just make the onions go translucent. We don't want to get them to the stage where they caramelize or they go brown. That will really change the flavour. So as you can see, nicely mixed through, beautiful translucent onions. Then we've got to the stage we want them to. What we're going to do then is add the dried spices. And again, you can alter the chilli depending on your flavour. In go the whites of the onions, and they just cook for a little bit longer than the greens. And we're ready. We put the greens on and take it immediately off the heat. Just stir those through, and then we place into a bowl that we're going to put to one side. Vivi makes the empanadas and loves making them, but after each time she says, never again, they're just far too complicated. Luckily, she forgets and then ends up making them again because they are lovely. So we're going to heat up some more oil, and then we're going to partially cook the meat. When it gets up to the right heat, we're going to add in the meat, but we're going to add it in two lots. This is to make sure it isn't all sticking together and clumping, and then we can just cook through half and then cook through the other half. And we're really just trying to brown the meat here. And when we have got it to the stage that we want to, we'll then set it aside. So keep it moving, keep them not settling into clumps. And just browning the outside, just giving them that Maillard reaction and that sort of sweetness of the caramelization. So we've got them brown as we want. We put them to one side, set them onto a tray and not into a bowl, otherwise the VW says that the heat would then continue to cook the meat, whereas this way it stops the cooking process at this point. we've done half, we do the other half. Right, then go back to our wonderful onions, add in some more lard, in goes some oregano, and then we add the meat. You can see all the juice coming out of the meat there, that needs to go in there as well. And just gently stir that round. This is a carne picante filling. Obviously empanadas can have multiple different fillings with sweet corn and multiple other things. And in different countries in South America they will be cooked in different ways. In some places they're fried and in some places they're baked. So technically we're doing a Mendoza, or originating from the Mendoza area of Argentina, a standard carne picante empanada. So just taste your going, just add a bit of salt, don't over salt. The olives later will provide a bit more salt. And then this is actually going in the fridge to solidify. Right, back to our lovely lard in water mix, and we're going to add the flour to it. Just mixing it around. And really you want to add the flour as we have put in the recipe, but then keep adding the flour until no more is absorbed. So adding just little cupfuls of flour afterwards, then to the stage where no more is absorbed and you've then got the perfect dough. Vito decided she didn't like that bowl, so we're putting everything back into a different bowl. You could keep the same bowl if you wanted, it really doesn't matter. It's just making sure that you combine all that flour with that dough and make sure it's all getting absorbed. And the flour that we make, the dough that we make, and the filling can obviously be frozen to be used later. So you could perhaps cook one batch and then have the rest for later on. Other ingredients like the olives and the boiled egg probably can't be frozen. So you can't freeze the assembled empanadas, but you could freeze the stages. A little bit more flour in. Bit like playing in the mud pies when you're a kid. Great fun, get your fingers in there into the... Lovely. So then take the dough, and what we're going to do now is we're going to divide it into 4 equal parts. And as I say, we're just going to use 1 part for each batch of the empanadas. The others we're going to wrap all 4 parts into cling film and chill it down before we're ready to assemble the empanadas. But what we did was we put some of those then into the freezer for later. Not quite happy that it's round enough there. So 4 lovely parcels of dough put aside for later. And now we are at later, so we take one of those parcels out and then we're going to roll it out to the right thickness. Now the VW has a beautiful rolling pin which has little discs to exactly determine how thin you roll the pastry. So we're going to roll out to a relative thinness, then remove one of the discs and roll out to an even thinner. The dough here really is just to act as the parcel to carry the innards. You want it thin enough that it doesn't interfere with the flavour, but not so thin that everything just pours out and it falls apart. And there is the art. So we're going to cut out a circle of the pastry and assemble our empanada. So we put a little bit of the filling in, some olives, some boiled egg, and even a little bit more butter. Put water around the edge of the pastry, and then close the edges together to seal. You can, if you are not confident, just use a fork to make sure the edges are properly sealed, but the VW is putting a little bit of an arty crimp in this. Makes them more attractive and obviously tastes much better. But don't worry, you can still just use a fork. And in case you missed it, we'll do it again. Out comes the disc of pastry. In goes some filling. Don't be shy with filling up enough to make sure you have a good flavour. The olives, the boiled egg, and butter. Seal around the edge. Get the edges together and crimp away. So then when you have a batch, you line them up on your baking tray and put them in the oven and watch them cook beautifully. Then put them on a board. As you can see, we have these beautiful empanadas bursting full of meat and flavour. Enjoy.